It's Thursday, March 13th. Mark Carney will be sworn in tomorrow as the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. CTV News has learned Carney's cabinet will be smaller than the current one, which has 37 ministers.
If you're like racing to the basement, there's no real prize for being the first person to get to the basement.
Tariff negotiations. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Ontario Premier Doug Ford are in Washington today for talks with U.S. officials in the heat of a trade war.
Canadian sovereignty and identity are non-negotiable.
Defending sovereignty, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is welcoming her counterparts to Quebec as Ottawa works to maintain harmony between Washington and its G7 partners.
I think that's a good idea, so people, especially those with kids like us, they can walk freely here without having to worry about the cars passing by.
Mount Royal redesign. The City of Montreal releasing plans for a major shift at Mount Royal Park. Stay with us, Canada. Your morning starts right now. And good morning and welcome to Your Morning. I'm Marcia McMillan.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday, aka Friday Eve. I'm Teddy Wilson.
Great to have you guys. I'm Kelsey McEwen. Thanks for starting your day off with us.
If Thursday is Friday Eve, I wonder if for Monday we can rebrand it with like the opposite of an Eve, like for Sunday, like a post-Sunday thing. Do you know what I mean? Just to put a nicer bow on it.
I don't know.
This is very complicated at 6 a.m.
Yeah, super complicated. You know what? We'll think about it.
Explain it to us at 8.
Okay, yeah, we'll come back to that later.
We'll come back to it.
There is a lot of news to get to, and we'll lead with some new timing in terms of when we'll get our next PM. Mark Carney will be sworn in as our 24th Prime Minister, along with his cabinet, tomorrow. Governor General Mary Simon's office confirming the swearing-in ceremony will take place at Rideau Hall Ballroom at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Ahead of the ceremony, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will officially resign. Carney would then unveil his new cabinet, including all of his picks. CTV News has learned his cabinet will be substantially smaller than the current one, which has 37 ministers. As soon as he's sworn in, Carney will have the power to trigger an early federal election or test the confidence of his new government in the House of Commons later this month.
I'm ready to sit down with President Trump at the appropriate time under a position where there's respect for Canadian sovereignty, and we're working for a common approach, a much more comprehensive approach for trade.
Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney there yesterday visiting a steel plant in Hamilton to show his support to workers. He's promising that proceeds from Canadian tariffs on American goods will go to the people in the affected industries. Carney also sharing this on X last night, quote, "We're going to build big things in Canada, and we need every one of you." Happening today, Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne, and Ontario Premier Doug Ford are meeting with U.S. trade officials in Washington.
I want to find out where their bar is set. Rather than keep moving the goalposts, I want to find out how quickly you want to move forward.
A meeting with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is on the agenda. This meeting is the result of a conversation between Ford and Washington, where Ford agreed to put a pause on a surcharge on electricity being sold to 3 U.S. states. In a news conference Wednesday, LeBlanc told reporters the focus of the meeting will be about lifting the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, as well as other tariffs that recently went into effect. Meanwhile, Ford says the Ontario government is pausing a U.S. ad campaign targeting their president's tariffs. Ahead of his trip to Washington, Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc helped announce Canada's response to U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs, maintaining this trade war needs to stop.
These continued tariff measures and the necessary and appropriate response that comes from Canada is not a constructive path to be on.
So Canada's counterpunch to the latest tariffs include things like sporting equipment and tricycles, tablewares of china and porcelain, and tools, including handsaws, and fittings that include American nuts and bolts. These tariffs come at a cost for Canadians as well. Overall, Canada's bill for Americans includes 25% counter tariffs on steel products worth $12.6 billion and aluminum products worth $3 billion. There are also tariffs on another $14.2 billion of imported goods, totaling $29.8 billion. Well, G7 foreign ministers are gathering in Quebec with our country's sovereignty, a key topic of discussion.
That's what the meeting is about. It is not a meeting about how we're going to take over Canada.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterating that the meeting will be about shared interests and not about annexing Canada. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly hosting a bilateral meeting with Rubio this morning. Tariffs and trade relations will be the top priority in these talks. The leaders will also focus on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. G7 foreign ministers are meeting until tomorrow afternoon in Charlevoix. Well, as you may have heard by now, the Bank of Canada has cut the key interest rate again, but are warning the ongoing trade war could push us to the brink.
We are now facing a new crisis. Depending on the extent and duration of new U.S. tariffs, the economic impact could be severe.
The central bank trying to keep inflation down. On Wednesday, the rate was cut for the 7th consecutive time to 2.75%. Costs are expected to rise with the imposed U.S. tariffs. The Bank of Canada Governor, Tiff Macklem, says monetary policy cannot offset the effects of a trade war. Well, the City of Montreal has big plans for Mount Royal Park, which would limit vehicle access and dramatically increase green space.
We're maintaining vehicular access, we're maintaining public transport access right into the heart of the park, but we're expanding the park from within and offering new immersive experiences in the park for people on foot and on bikes.
So the plan is to replace the equivalent of more than 3 soccer fields worth of paved space with green space along Chameleon Oud Way, only allowing access to emergency vehicles. The green space would include new trails and bike paths. 2 Montreal firms have been given a $12.8 million contract to study and refine the city's vision for the mountain, which also includes removing a significant amount of parking. The city's opposition party says this sort of redesign should have been left for voters to decide on, with the municipal election just 6 months away. We're now getting a closer look at a carjacking arrest in Scarborough last week.
I think I'm going to drive by to a parking lot here on my left. There's just one cute van there.
So Toronto police just shared this helicopter video. Officers responded to a robbery call near Victoria Park Avenue and Shepherd Avenue East on Sunday. It's alleged the victim was in their car at the time when a male suspect entered from the rear door. Police say the suspect had a knife and held it against the victim, demanding the keys. After complying, other suspects got in the car before taking off. A York Regional Police helicopter was able to track the car down. The suspects fled on foot, but officers chased them down and made arrests. 3 youth were charged in connection with this incident. Well, we're going to turn this one way up to 11. Yes, this is the official teaser for Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues. It is a sequel to one of the greatest films ever made, the 1984 music mockumentary, This is Spinal Tap. The sequel set to hit theaters this fall. Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer revise and reprise their roles as one of England's loudest bands. We'll see the group reunite after a 15-year hiatus for one final concert.